When you twist the facts or make things up for political gain, that's not responsible leadership.
No, it's not.
Recent studies show that misinformation on COVID has cost hundreds of millions of dollars and thousands of lives. Peddling misinformation and disinformation has serious and devastating consequences. Mr. Poilievre has made a deliberate choice. But we, all of you in this room, have been there day in and day out to deliver
This
for
hurts
and to reassure
my
our
soul.
constituents through these tough times by sticking to facts and science. When you twist the facts,
How do I get rid of this? I don't want to hear this. I
gain,
need this to go away.
that's not.
Recent studies show that misinformation and disinformation has cost people lives. Well, what's Justin Trudeau talking about there? Verbal diarrhea, Georgie, I could deal with diarrhea. I could actually deal with vomit. I could deal with any bodily fluid except for that rubbish coming out of that. He's an actual psychopath. I mean, this is, I asked the question last week, if we can play internet psychiatrist. I believe 98% of respondents feel that Justin Trudeau is an actual clinical, diagnosable psychopath, narcissist, sociopath, whatever you want to call it. Science, recent studies have confirmed that misinformation and disinformation have cost thousands of lives. Oh, well, let's what study was that? What study was that? Let's not get ahead of ourselves here. Oh, CTV News ran an article, did they? Oh, looky. And what do we have here? We got to remember to go back to where we're going. Looky at the absolute. It's my channel. I can swear if I want to. I'm not going to. Horse plop. Look at this horse plop. I mean, when we talk about trusting the science and following the science, we're living in a world now when doctors, our experts, medical experts in Canada, in the States, 2 years into the most devastating pandemic the world has ever seen, admit that they have not been counting hospitalizations by distinguishing hospitalized with COVID versus hospitalized from COVID. These are the medical geniuses, our scientists, our doctors, our politicians. 2 years into the pandemic, make the stunning admission they haven't been distinguishing between hospitalized from COVID versus hospitalized with COVID, which necessarily means that they have not been distinguishing died from COVID versus died with COVID, which if you said this in the beginning of the pandemic, you would have been called a heartless bastard who wants grandma to die. These are the people who, despite failing at the most basic element, the most basic level of crisis management, they now come to the conclusion, oh, look at Dr. Theresa Tam, the one who told you to have sex with a mask on. Dr. Theresa Tam, Canada's chief public officer of health, told you to have sex with a mask on because COVID. I'm going to get myself even angrier than I was yesterday. Today I can laugh about it. Yesterday I wasn't laughing about anything. Theresa Tam told us to have sex with masks. There was another one there, Bonnie, whatever her name is, out of British Columbia, who said, do it through a glory hole. When you're having sex and you're exchanging the P to the V or the P to the P or the P to the B, whatever you're into, because of COVID, put a hole in a wall. Do it like the religious folk. Put a hole in a sheet in a wall and go glory hole. When you're, if you're going to do a little oral stuff or you're going to have bodily fluids being exchanged, wear a mask. Don't even look at your partner. These are the doctors. But this is the latest of what they've come to, people. And there's a punchline to all of this because it's the full wrap-up fake news smear, but propaganda at the government level. COVID-19 misinformation contributed to 2,800 deaths. Report suggests. You know what I can suggest? I suggest the moon is made out of cheese. prove me wrong. The report suggests that misinformation contributed to 2,800 Canadian. That's terrible. They should really be going after people for misinformation. A new report says misinformation about COVID-19 contributed to more than 2,800 Canadian deaths and at least $300 million in hospital and ICU stays. The Council of Canadian Academies says misinformation led to people not believing COVID-19 was real or was exaggerated. Fostering vaccine hesitancy. You know what else fosters vaccine hesitancy? Seeing your childhood friends not wake up after going to bed. That will foster vaccine hesitancy. Seeing doctors lie day in and day out, only to one day finally admit, yeah, when we said it didn't cause myocarditis, we're wrong. It's a small risk, 1 in 5,000 per dose. When they said it didn't interfere with menstrual cycles, only a year later to say, okay, it interferes with menstrual cycles. That'll foster more hesitancy than anything, but I'm getting ahead of myself. By the way, the Council for Canadian Academies, government funded. The study suggests that the belief that COVID-19 was a hoax or exaggerated led to 2.35 million people delaying or refusing to get the vaccines between March and November 2021. Oh. The report authors estimated that if those vaccinations had happened, these idiots are not even distinguishing between hospitalizations, yet they're going to tell us what would have happened had more people taken it. It's pathological gaslighting. These buffoons who have lied to you at every step of the way. Don't wear masks. They're not necessary. Oh, what's that? Now they're mandatory. Why did we tell you they weren't necessary? We didn't want you to run on the masks and leave our, front lines without required PPE. So we lied to you because we think you're too stupid to deal with the truth. Oh, what's that? No, it didn't originate in a lab in China. You're a conspiracy theorist for saying that. Oh, what's that? It's a very plausible theory now. Oh, yeah. No, vaccines don't cause myocarditis. Okay, they do, but only 1 in 5,000. Okay, per dose for a certain age bracket. Oh, they don't interfere with your menstrual cycles. Quit being an anti-vaxxer misogynist. I don't know how that works exactly, but oh wait, they do interfere with your menstrual cycle. Can cause heavy bleeding for months, but very, very rarely, very rarely. Oh, they're safe for breastfeeding women and pregnant women. Oh, what's that? The UK in small print at the end says we don't have sufficient data to make that affirmation, even though we've made that affirmation on another website. This is enough. This is enough. And then they blame others. They blame others for spreading vaccine hesitancy. Vulnerable communities always pay the biggest cost for things that go wrong in our society, he said. Oh, it's the vulnerable communities. You mean the same vulnerable communities that had been experimented on by prior governments? Tuskegee experiments, residential schools in Canada. People don't really appreciate. It's not just that the residential schools, which existed until 1996, I think was the last one they closed down, which were run by Justin Trudeau's own daddy. It's not just that they ripped Native kids out of their families for assimilation, for the greater good, but it was for their own good when they did it. Anybody who doesn't appreciate that, also, memory of a goldfish. When they tore Native children out of their families for assimilation, it was for the good of the kids, it was for the good of society, it was for their own good and the greater good. When they were in these residential schools, everyone thinks it was just like horrible abuse, which it was. It was beyond that. They experimented on the children while they were in these residential schools. Oh, but these communities, which are now reluctant to trust the very same child of the father, now they're invoking the fact that they're the ones who are hardest hit. The actual impact of COVID misinformation is very likely much larger than the report findings show, Hammerflarb said, because they only looked at the 9-month period during the pandemic, which has so far lasted about they only looked at a 9-month period. They should have just stuck with the 2 weeks. Maybe if they just stuck with the 2 weeks to flatten the curve. The study also didn't include estimated indirect costs and the ripple costs. What were we looking at here? The Council of Canadian Academies. I haven't looked at the chat yet, people. We got to. Oh no, here, hold on one second. Funding. Oh, look at this. The Council of Canadian Academies Conseil des Académies Canadiennes was created to perform independent expert assessment of the science that is relevant to important public issues. The CCA is a private nonprofit corporation that received $30 million in funding grant in 2005 from the government of Canada. So a government-funded independent, how the hell, I'm sorry, am I reading these words properly? The company, the CCA is, oh no, sorry here, independent. It was created to perform independent expert assessments. Independent. And it gets $30 million funding grant from the federal government. It's a very convenient conclusion they came to. You see, this government-funded entity came to this conclusion that misinformation and disinformation cost people, killed nearly 3,000 Canadians. And going full circle, it just happened to make it into Trudeau's speech. His psychotic, gaslighting confession through projection of a diatribe. It just so happens that this federally funded entity, which came to a very convenient conclusion that misinformation cost lives, hundreds of millions of dollars. If only people didn't have access to that misinformation, people would have 3,000 Canadians would not be dead right now. What a convenient circle of laundering of information. Oh, and by the way, just because I have a memory, CTV News writing an article about how misinformation might have contributed to Canadian deaths. Look at I only put together 4 because I think more than 4 gets too confusing. CTV News. Truth Tracker. There's no scientific proof that COVID-19 was made in the Chinese lab. Lie. Misinformation. Let's go misinformation number 2 coming from CTV News. That cost people lives. Imagine how much different the world would have been in responding to a virus if they knew or if they had looked into the prospect that it was actually a man-engineered virus. Imagine how much different the response would have looked. New study provides reassuring data on rare heart condition after COVID-19 vaccination. Rare heart condition that only affects 1 in 5,000 of a certain age bracket, young males. Rare. How many lives did that lie cost, CTV? Here's another one. Pfizer-BioNTech say COVID-19 vaccine likely to prevent asymptomatic infection. Oh, we didn't know at the time. It wasn't a lie. We were just wrong because we're idiots. There are 2 types of lies in this world. One is when you say something that you know is false, and another one is when you say something having no reason to believe it's true. Oh, it was just the best that we could do. It's likely to prevent asymptomatic infection, except Pfizer didn't test on transmission. How many lives did that lie cost? Oh, here's number 4, the grand slam of misinformation coming from government-subsidized propaganda. It's more like a poison. Equestrians warn against using horse dewormer to treat COVID-19. CTV News. The shameless bastard hypocrites that have the audacity to now say misinformation costs 2,800 lives. You know what? I might have no problem believing that to the extent that you are the disinformation CTV News. You get a government-funded entity to come up with a cockamamie, untenable, it would be laughable if it weren't tragic conclusion about how misinformation, and I have no doubt they're talking about True North, Rebel News, Viva Fry. I know who the hell they're talking about. They come out with this laughably stupid conclusion that the prime minister who funded this idiotic research, who funded it, then gets to say, oh, studies show that misinformation and disinformation have cost lives. Now we need to shut them down. Now we need to go past Bill C-11 because Canadians' lives are at risk. In a study that we funded, that's absolutely laughably stupid by a bunch of experts who have been systematically wrong from day one, with a media that themselves have been guilty of putting out the most egregious misinformation from day one. But no, let's go shut down the independent voices. Oh.